Well, greetings and thanks for joining us today for the 95th episode of Lightbulb Moments. Remember, money isn't the most important thing in life, but it's reasonably close to oxygen on the gotta have it scale. Hi, I'm Tom Kuhn from Qnity. I'm your host. We're here to help take what's overwhelming, confusing, and complicated into a simpler and clearer path towards greater financial prosperity or wellness, using rules of engagement, simple, visual, and actionable. Last week, I'm sorry, I think we were off last week. Am I getting my weeks right here? We were off last week, I think. That was Labor Day week. I am totally mixed up on my calendar. Anyway, we had Lynn McNeese from iSpa. We went through several trends that are going on in the wellness and spa industry. We also had an opportunity to unpack features or different components of a recent iSpa study. This was their 23rd year of doing a survey and doing information and creating a great report with the help of PricewaterhouseCoopers. And Lynn did a great job of bringing life to it. And then today we have Laura Graven. She's a co-owner of Tailored Salon, and she's also a Qnity coach. Before I get to this, the Pro Beauty Compensation Study is not just open for entry. It is soon coming to, at least the first part of it, it is soon coming to a deadline, which is next Monday for the data submission part of this. I've got this up on the screen, so we've extended the deadline to submit the data. It is by end of day next Monday. This is a screenshot from our website. All you have to do is go to qnityinc.com and it'll take you through everything. So the first phase, I'm sorry, not phase, part, okay, is to submit your data. We made it super simple. You enter into a worksheet that we create for you. It's from an independent CPA firm. And many of you have gotten part of the process done, but we're really hoping that you could take it to completion as well as recruit anybody else to be part of this study. The data submission, again, ends Monday. And then we have a couple weeks to complete the survey, which is an even shorter and quicker process than submitting the data. So we're certainly going to remind you of the importance of this, not only for your own recruiting and retention, but also to change the narrative in pro beauty about what a career looks like. And I do want to emphasize that participation in this also entitles you to the report, which is going to be rich with information, the first information that we've seen like this since at least I've been in the beauty industry. So strong call to action. The survey questions are very, very rich in terms of what they're going to produce in terms of information for all of us. Now, as to Qnity, so financial wellness is really what makes us tick, whether it's for students, employers, employees. We have recently launched our Money Pro Financial Wellness Program for members of your team. We're super excited about it. This is a picture from the Jill Craven Salon. That are describing their creatively visual way to make learning about personal finances interesting and fun. It's beneficial to the company and members of your team, so we certainly would love to have you be part of that. It also teaches how to read paycheck, and it helps address several things that may create conflict between employers and employees. We also have a new tracking tool. We're going to be announcing another feature for people that are in this program already. We've got some exciting announcements coming up, I think as early as next week. And then we also have money for students. We're super pleased to be in over 100 campuses right now. And this particular program features the 9 Grid and several other great financial literacy learning tools. Also, 2 to 10 is coming up in a few weeks if you're eligible. We hope that you've signed up and we hope to see you soon. It's a great community of multi-location salons that get together once a year. All right, to prosper, remember to manage your ATM, your attention, time, and money, and it's not lost on us how important your time is. So thanks for spending your precious time with us today. Past recordings are on YouTube. If you're listening to this on YouTube, thanks for listening to the recording. I think you'll enjoy our session today with Laura, which we're going to get to in a moment. We welcome members of the school community and the salon and spa community. And I want to get to some light bulb moments before we bring Laura to the mic here. All right, so some light bulb moments. I had a great conversation with Laura yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about small business, financial management, and we're going to get to some of the things we covered in a little bit. It also led me to, well, each week I try to do a little bit of research and try to bring something relevant to the conversation. Just hot off the press, literally just got this, is a CFO report, which this is a high level view of finance, team projections and strategies. And so this is a study by CFO, and CFO is an organization that is a series of content that is produced with sponsorship of Oracle, but it's all about resources for CFOs. And in many cases, you are the CFO. In small business, in many cases, there is not a separate function or separate individual for the CFO function. Laura, for example, who you'll get to in a moment here, she is the CFO. And, there's small businesses and there's micro businesses. A micro business is under $5 million, which is the majority of the salon industry and the spa industry, at least day spas. And so learning a little bit from CFOs, I think, is relevant for all of us here. So here's a few findings from this I'm going to call out here. This recent study that was done with CFOs from across the US, more cognizant of cash flow management and creative. They are more cognizant of cash flow management and creative with workforce attraction and retention. Spending is being looked at very closely, of course, as it always should be, as well as raising prices while exploring or building technology efficiently. Although cautious about inflation and potential global recession, they're adopting new hiring and pricing policies and working more collaboratively while pushing forward with growth initiatives. Some other key findings I want to go through with you. These CFOs are looking at they're generally confident. Their businesses are experiencing growth or building business resiliency. Business resiliency, that's a good one. Next is plans are coming to fruition. Most CFOs expect their internal structural goals and expectations to come to fruition. Talent remains a concern, of course. Talent acquisition and retention, both in the finance function and the organization. CFOs are concerned about rising salaries and worker demands and commitment. Interesting. Inflation, top of mind. CFOs continue to explore ways to deal with increased costs by reducing expenses and developing strategies to pass along cost increases to customers. And then finally, technology spending will continue as they look to enhance worker productivity and reduce time and errors by automating back office tasks and operational activities. So some interesting findings from this, which I think will tie into the conversation that we're going to have with Laura in just a second here. And, as far as inflation, big topic right now. About 41% of CFOs say they wish they had evaluated areas of potential inflation mitigation before 2022. So, all right, well, hindsight's 2020, isn't it? All right, so let's do this. Let's welcome Laura into the conversation. And Laura, I've got some, before we wrap up today, remind me if I forget, I want to show some things about the Money SBO workshop that's happening in the Twin Cities this weekend. But how are you, Laura?
I'm well. How are you, Tom?
I'm great. It's great to have you formally as a guest in the roundtable here. We know that many Wednesdays you're not able to join us because you're also behind the chair.
I am. Yes, like so many of us, wearing a variety of different hats within the business. So yeah, usually I can't always get to visit, and I often get to have to watch the recordings, but I'm glad to be here with you today.
Well, I think it's important that a thread continues throughout the entire duration of Lightbulb Moments. Since the very beginning, and fast forward to today, certainly we have a big passion and a heart and a big sense of community around small businesses. And so you are a small business owner. You have your head down running your own business with your partner, Ashley, who is temporarily out, as I understand. She just had a child. So, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But, just get down to, I mean, so many people that join us each week can relate to you and your situation. Your small business, you started with a partner, you're running the finance function. Something else that I think is relevant is you're also a Qnity coach, and you have an opportunity to sort of extend yourself and extend some of your talents to a greater community. We're grateful for that. And you'll be up here this weekend for Money SBO, our workshop on financial management. So, but tell us a little bit more about your business first, where you're located, when you started it, and all of that.
Sure. So Tailored Salon, we're here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are just about 8 years old this coming year. And my business partner, Ashley, correct, she just had her very first baby. So we have been preparing for her maternity leave, which has been truly amazing, because I think without the tools of Qnity, we certainly wouldn't have felt nearly as prepared as we've been for her to be gone. But as Tom said, I'm also behind the chair, usually about 2 days a week. So kind of in the trenches with the team. But yeah, really love the work. I think what makes this work so rich is certainly the community and being connected to a variety of mentors and people who have guided my own work. And it has been so important to me as a leader. And yeah, that's just why we're really grateful for the entire Qnity team and the community, because I think it's really helped grow and build our success as a business.
So you are behind the chair, and you're also the one that runs the finance function. So it's safe to say you're the CFO.
Yes, I love that article that you shared right before we came on. I definitely agree. All of those things that you described are constantly on the top of mind as a small business owner.
The finance function in your business didn't always run smooth. And then we'll fast forward to today, some of the practices you put in place that I think are important. So speak to that a little bit in terms of it not always running smooth.
I think it wasn't ever that it was a very tumultuous function for us. Ashley and I have always operated and run our finance function in a very conservative way. So we have always felt confident that we have enough money, but we've never, until recently, I would say in the last 2 years especially, we've gotten really, really dialed in. And that definitely has a lot to do with habits and practices weekly, which I think we'll talk a little bit about. But so it's not that our finances were chaotic, it's just that they weren't well systemized. And so we were constantly looking back at past reports, but by that point it already felt too late to make decisions differently, and we would make projections about what was to come, but that made too many assumptions that we felt like we couldn't always depend on. And so certainly some practices now that have really transformed our business is just the weekly habit of a few different things, of our weekly transfer that we have been doing now very consistently, but also week in, week out of what has been going on as far as what comes in for our sales and what goes out for our expenses.
So you talked about consistency and then intensity, and you have another lens that you're looking for, because we have a group of our clients that Candice Gliotto is leading. It's a coaching group. It includes, some group time and then one-on-one time and tools and all that stuff. And you've had the ability to witness other small business owners take a fresh look at their finance function, which gives you an interesting perspective. So you have your own business, and then sort of from the outside looking in, and talk a little bit about consistency and then intensity.
Yeah, so as Tom said, I have the privilege to be working with Candace in the profitability Qnity in action group, and I'm the support coach in that. And that has really been a privilege to be alongside that group as they're kind of biting off some really big new lenses of looking through, but also tasks that they take on after each of our calls. That's been really great. I really love the author, James Clear. He has this phrase of consistency over intensity as it relates to our practices. And that is something for me that has been a constant reminder for me to be starting small. I think too often we have these big ambitions, or we set the goal, and sometimes that's the easy part for us as leaders and as business owners. And the execution, we already know, we talk about that all the time within Qnity. Executing the things that we intend to is often where we get hung up. And so I think for me, I've really found that being able to start small in whatever it is that I'm going to be executing is really important. Otherwise, if I think everything has to be perfect first, then I just won't start at all. And so starting really small for us, after we had gone through especially now in the SBO group, or in the SBO program, but also in this Qnity in Action profitability group, we encourage people to start the weekly transfer. And that transfer we began about 2 years ago now. And what I loved about that was, it was 1% of the sales for the week, and it felt like nothing. It literally felt like nothing. But starting that habit weekly is what really, I think, was able to help us start realistically and small. And over time, we have cranked that up significantly. And our weekly transfers turned into 10% now every week.
Wow.
And that has really transformed our business because it has grown our savings so tremendously.
Hold on here. I'm maybe hearing a new piece of information here. So are you saying that your weekly transfer, which essentially is being very intentional about liquidity and parking funds in another account before it's spent, are you saying you're doing 10% per week?
Yes.
Okay,
So
that's a substantial amount of money. Okay, keep going.
So that is really, for me, I think the big thing when we talk about starting with the consistency over intensity. When we started a weekly transfer of 1%, like I said, it felt like nothing. It was very, very doable. But we had big hopes of starting to have an account towards some of our bigger lofty goals of whether that's, purchasing a building or just expanding our business. And so we really had these big goals of what that could look like for us financially. But starting with the 1% was really important. And that habit, doing that week in and week out, was so important because then over time, as we got more dialed in to our finance function and really understood with a lot more clarity than we used to have, we felt more confident and comfortable turning up that intensity of that weekly transfer.
Yeah, I think it's such a great example. And, I've always just, one of our core success principles is the importance of small, and sometimes like micro small, like ridiculously small. Not that 1%, 1% is still real money, but so I love the consistency and intensity analogy. And I'm also a big fan of Atomic Habits too. I think they also talk about 2-minute habits and what have you. And anyway, so it is a great example. So the consistency was you just started to build this ritual of making a very small transfer, and you developed confidence and trust that you were going to continue it. And then the intensity increased. In this particular case, the intensity is measured by the percentage. I will tell you that 10% does create a little bit of a wow for me. That's intense.
One more thing about that, actually, it is interesting because I think when we made the decision to go to 10%, we also felt like, are we really ready for it? Like, is this really realistic? Is this doable for us? And there have been different seasons of the business where, we've just decided No, there is something more important than putting that money away right now. And there's something that we're going to prioritize over that. And so we've then backed off, maybe brought it back down to 5. We've never gone back down to 1%, but we have backed off down to 5%. But what I find to be really interesting is the consistency is still there. The habit is still occurring, and there's still value in that and success from it. So I think the importance of that being established, starting really small, has been so important for us. And I think it's been such a key of our success in that I also think there's been other places where, what is the ambition that I'm going after, and what is the smallest, tiniest version of that I can start with?
So that's one example of a practice, tangible thing that you're doing in the finance function as a busy small business owner that also is behind the chair. You also mentioned week in, week out, which Candace Gliato, we mentioned Candace name a couple times. I think Candace has joined us today. Good morning, Candace. She has had this streak going. She's over 400 consecutive weeks now for having like a weekly meeting. So, whoa, Lisa, did you say 12% weekly transfer for us? Oh, she just one-upped you on that one, Lisa.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. So talk about week in, week out and what it was before, because I'm guessing that before you just dealt with the finance function when you got the P&L and that. But now, you have a weekly habit of carving out time. Let's speak to that a little bit in terms of consistency and intensity and all that stuff.
So the before version of week in and week out for us didn't exist. It was, once a month, we were consistent. We got our financials consistently. We looked at them. Oftentimes it turned into maybe a 20-minute conversation between Ashley and I of, what's our bottom line? How does profitability look right now? And again, we've always been so conservative that we were comfortable enough in that. And when we really started with week in and week out, it started for me personally in my own personal finances, and then it really bled into what I'm doing within the business. And so for me, the word budget is not a noun, it's a verb. And budgeting is something that you have to be doing with consistency, and the process of it can kind of evolve. So for our business, especially, week in and week out has evolved. Again, we started really small. It started just as looking at, initially it was what's coming in. We got really, really confident and got comfortable knowing what our sales were becoming on a weekly basis instead of monthly or even further than that. And so I guess the practice of week in and week out for me has evolved over time, because the more you know, the better you do, right? And so as I've continued to learn and grow in my own CFO hat, what I do in that time has started to look a lot different in the time that I spend. So again, it's just the practice. Each week, I take a look at what came in. I take a look at what came in and what came out. I establish what can go out for the following week based on the numbers that just came in. So it's just really, it has transformed how we look at finance, and it has really ultimately helped us get really dialed in so that 10% transfer is possible for us.
I think that from my point of view, and working with small business owners on the finance function for a very, very long time, it does boil down to a handful of practices that absolutely make a really big difference. So we're hitting on a lot of them right now. I'm going to add a couple. One is we call push the pulse. Push the pulse is you were doing things monthly and now you're doing them weekly. So a quicker pulse. The other thing is, I know a big part of your weekly ritual is to have what we call a forward focus. So you're looking forward. Initially, when you were having these weekly meetings with yourself, this weekly ritual, were you looking more at the past? And has it evolved to become more future orientated?
No, for me, it always was forward thinking, because as I said, in my personal finances, I started getting really good at learning how to prepare for things that weren't as consistent. I wanted to feel really strong in my cash flow so that when unexpected things came up, there was money already earmarked for that. So for me, it always really was a forward focus. I think the biggest thing was, again, starting to look at it weekly versus monthly, because we want to get the habit or the decision making that we're doing, we need to get that as close to the result as possible. And monthly was too far away. So when I started to bring it down weekly, I was really able to start decision making a lot better in a closer way to the result. So
Decision making with confidence.
yeah,
Absolutely. And with information and data and that kind of stuff. You know, I look again at this CFO, you know, update here and some of the things they're looking at. And regarding the finance function, in many cases, these are larger organizations and they're hiring staff, you know. You of course, you know, you're not a substitute for a trained outside finance professional, you know. And so you use a firm, and the firm helps you, and then but you basically make a lot of the QuickBook entries through the month. At the end of the month, you know, they clean it up and you go from there. Now in terms of your business partner, you know, you're the CFO, you're doing the finance function. It's less frequent with her. I mean, it's like once a month, but you have a sit down, you go through the P&Ls and which I found that, you know, a lot of small businesses don't even do that. You know,
I think that's the thing for me, you know, doing the weekly budgeting week in and week out and all the practices that I do weekly, that is really kind of what I've taken on, and that is my role. But Ashley and I now, when we do sit down for a monthly, we have an isolated set of time. We've calendarized it. We can depend on it. We always know that it's going to be there once a month. And now we have more substance to look over, and we're able to see things with a lot more clarity than we used to. So it wasn't just this overview of what's our bottom line on the P&L, but what's going well, where do we tighten up? We can, you know, also, I mean, we've had a significant amount of growth in the last 2 years. So being able to see and celebrate the growth that we've had in sales has also just been exciting and a good thing for us to do monthly together.
Yeah. So you love the finance function.
It's my favorite.
Yeah. And you'll be up here this weekend for Money SBO. Now, I'm just going to take a quick moment here before I forget. I have some slides that relate to this weekend. And okay, so we just completed a new workbook because this is a whole new updated program, you know. And so here we have a section on forward focus, budgeting. We also have a segment on inventory, week in, week out, sharing numbers with creative, profit improvement plan, benchmarks. So these are just a sneak peek for some things from the workbook that, you know, Candace Gliato and other members of our team have did just a great job on it. So, you know, you have, you know, been part of communities now that go through the finance function by virtue of this Qnity in Action Profit Group. You know, how does the community element play into this? I mean, small business owners getting with other small business owners on the finance function.
It's so huge, right? I have always been a strong believer that we really can't do anything alone. And I think that often leadership can really feel isolating and really lonely. And a lot of the clients that I work with as a coach have expressed that and shared that as well. And I know that was a huge turning point for us at Tailored, was once we started being connected to more people. And it's not the sharing of ideas and the sharing of, you know, what's working well for us, and that storytelling is so powerful. And it's what helps us come up with some of our own ideas that sure we need to adjust and turn into our own work, but also, you know, without that, Tailored certainly would not be what it is today without the community that we're a part of leaders and other small business owners who have gone before us and have learned a lot more than I ever have, and are willing to share that information. So I think that it's been a huge part of our own success. And I think it's what's really special about this community is that when you're feeling stuck, you have somewhere to go. And they may not have all the answers, but they're going to help. Like, this entire community is here to help you find your right answers.
Yeah, because in many cases, the finance function is in isolation, and it is, you know, and to a degree for good reasons, because there should be privacy regarding a company's finances. But you know, certainly the idea here is to come out of isolation, and then you can go fast. I mean, learn from people like you, learn from people like Candace, because you're performing. You're taking the action in the finance function, so you're doing the work, and the rewards are coming in terms of liquidity, because if you're putting away 10% of your sales and you're growing and your expenses are tight. I mean, we haven't really explored deeply profitability as much as I have with Candace, for example, because I know her profitability is very high. And but you can't deny this correlation between taking action in the finance function and performance. It's just many people just don't do it because it's either overwhelming or whatever. That's why I thought it'd be a great thing that you said yesterday when we were prepping that stuck out to me the most was this whole thing: consistency first, then intensity. So
I think that is so important, because I know it's not usually normal that people love the finance function as small business owners and as, you know, creative people behind the chair. It's just not often that you find that. And so I think a lot of times people can feel really overwhelmed. You might be dialed in some ways in your finance function, but it's not very typical that people want to have to sort through this stuff and have a better grasp and understanding of it. But that's just why I encourage people to just start small. What is the big ambition that you have around your finances, and just find the small version of that, because the more attention that you give it, you can crank up the intensity over time. And that really has certainly transformed my business and given us a lot of success. So
it's a great message, Laura. So thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too.
Let's all give Laura a virtual round of applause. Thanks for sharing, taking your precious time today.
Thanks for having me.
You have forthcoming the $1 Million light bulb on your way. So we'll have you back as a guest. And thanks again, Laura.
Thanks, Tom. Good to see you.
All right. So let's see. And any comments in there? Go for it. And I'm going to move up into wrap up here in just a moment here. Lightheart Sanders, I do want to give these guys a shout out. They help sponsor the roundtable, and they're also the independent CPA firm for the compensation study, and they're doing a lot of work behind the scenes. So shout out to Lightheart Sanders, not only for being a sponsor of the roundtable, but for their efforts to make this compensation study, which is so needed, a reality. Yeah, financial wellness for Pro Beauty. We already talked about Money Pro, our student program. I talked about sponsors. I think my closing thought is that the compensation study is very top of mind for me. It is we're at a critical point, and we could use as much help as we possibly could get, so that high participation is there. The more people that are part of the study, the more relevant it is. So, and it takes a village. So I'm unapologetic in my plea and request of all of you to help do what you can to make sure that we have a timely submission of the information, and then also that you start with start with your company. And if you haven't completed, please complete it ASAP. And then reach out to some other business owners that you know, so we can have a great report. So, all right, guys, it is now 36 minutes after the hour. I can see we have many of our favorite people as usual. What a great group. So thanks for tuning in this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again to Laura, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye now.